Israeli security forces have arrived in full force to dismantle Iranian terror infrastructure here in Judea and Samaria. This is the largest anti-terror operation that has been conducted here in the last 20 years. As amazing as it is, it's not gone unnoticed by the haters of Israel. The internationals are leveling criticism at Israel's operation here. The US, the EU, are voicing strong concerns, while Israel maintains that these actions are crucial for its defense against rising terrorist threats. Today, we're going to explore the details of this operation, the international response, and what this means for Israel's security and the global relations. I'm Joshua, and this is the Israel Guide. Welcome back to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of Jew hatred and anti-Israel propaganda, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. You know, many of us are not understanding what's going on in Judea and Samaria. It's a real critical issue that's just now being recognized by many top officials in the Israeli government, of course, to the horrors of those leaders in the UN and around the world that oppose and that hate Israel, and especially hate Israel's presence in Judea and Samaria, what I like to call the biblical heartland of Israel. They'd like that to become a terrorist state. So we're going to talk about it. The IDF is conducting a major operation right now, bigger than anything that's been done here in the last 20 years. They're going after Iranian backed terror units that are being established here with an effort to make Judea and Samaria into another Gaza. Literally the same backing that's going to the Gazans to wage this insane war against Israel. They're trying to expand that now. Let's take it to other areas to attack Israel, just like we've done in Gaza. This is what Iran says. Let's get this going in some other areas. Israel says, absolutely not. We've got to take this seriously, and we've got to destroy, dismantle, completely rid Judea and Samaria of these Iranian-backed terror groups. So the IDF has begun. Thank God. They decided to wage this anti-terror operation just after the failed attempt at a suicide bombing in Tel Aviv. You guys remember that just happened just over a week ago. And this caused them to understand, wow, the terrorists that failed, thank God, that attempted suicide bombing was only a few miles from where I am now, where he was from, here in Judea and Samaria. Therefore, the IDF decided, the command was given, rid Judea and Samaria of terrorism and this major infrastructure that has embedded itself here in mass. It's got to be destroyed. They've begun dismantling this Iranian-backed terror network now. They just started. Last night was a huge operation to dismantle the infrastructure in this area. Foreign Minister Israel Katz says this. He says, and I quote, "We need to deal with the terror threat exactly as we deal with the terror infrastructure in Gaza, including the temporary evacuation of Palestinian civilians and any other step needed." Let me explain. In Gaza, the only way to rid the embedded terror unit is to pull those that are not a part of the terrorist infrastructure away, destroy the terrorist, destroy their infrastructure that it's embedded in civilian-style areas, including schools and mosques and hospitals. You have to pull the citizens out and destroy that infrastructure, no matter how many miles deep it may be. They're finding that this is the exact same situation that is in Gaza is already embedded here in Judea and Samaria. And the foreign minister, Israel Katz, understands that and is trying to wake up the public that Israel needs to treat the Iranian-backed terrorist of Judea and Samaria just like they treat the Iranian-backed terrorists of Gaza. There should be no difference. Pull civilians out, destroy the infrastructure. He quotes again, he says, "This is a war in every sense." Most people think that the situation in Gaza, that's a war in Gaza. And Hezbollah in the north, that's a war. The Iranian threat, that's war front. Most people don't understand that what's going on here in Judea and Samaria is just as much of a war front as all three of the other. You've got to understand that. The terror infrastructure that Iran has embedded here, they would love for you to think that it's not a war front so they can continue their guerrilla-style war against Israel unnoticed. But that's not happening. We're going to tell you, and you need to be aware of the truth of what's actually happening. It's a critical point where Iran would like to sneak another war front in, build an infrastructure as they built in Gaza here in Judea and Samaria. It's not happening. We will expose that right now. It will not happen. The IDF will not allow that to happen, Lord willing, as they did in Gaza. This can't be done again. We cannot continue the insanity of allowing Iranian-backed terror groups the freedom to build infrastructure to attack Israel from within Israel. Cannot happen. It has to be stopped. Again, I quote Minister Katz. He says, Iran is working to establish a terror front against Israel in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, according to the model it used in Lebanon and Gaza, by funding and arming terrorists and smuggling advanced weapons from Jordan. He just outlined to us how it happens, how they do this. They built these infrastructures in Lebanon, they built this infrastructure in Gaza, and they used the funding from Iran to and smuggle weapons in from Jordan. This border of Jordan, everybody thinks Jordan's such a great ally and partner here. No, absolutely not. So much weapons, insane amount of weapons get smuggled in through Jordan. That's how all these the terror infrastructure, that's how Iran is getting this stuff here. Through the Lebanese border, the Jordanian border, they're smuggling insane amounts of infrastructure into this Iranian-backed war front of Judea and Samaria. So here's the details of the operation. They hit Jenin heavily yesterday. The IDF actually conducted airstrikes, which was phenomenal. Killing terrorists, armed terrorists, I will add. They seized weapons and ammunition. In the Jordan Valley, they uncovered explosives that were planted along roadsides in order to attack soldiers. This has been a really, unfortunately, successful for the terrorists. They've been able to disguise bombs and harm and kill many, many IDF soldiers, which is a real travesty. But thank God they're exposing and uncovering these mines before they're exploded. So in Tulkarm also, the IDF eliminated terrorists that were hidden inside of a mosque. Again, terrorists are hiding in a mosque. The underground of the mosque was their hub, their base. See this video right here. This video has, this is a terror hub. It's got their cameras, their wires are coming in from cameras outside. They're using this as their grand central to bring information in. And again, we've talked about this so many times on the show. They use the mosque as a means of fighting the war. It's their grand central. It's their operational hub is the mosque. Let's put weapons in there. Let's build bombs in there because international law will protect us. Not anymore. As long as you're building bombs in your mosque and holding weapons in there, the international law does not protect you. Hey guys, we'll be right back. But first, Israel's been in a war for over 10 months now, which has taken a big toll on the economy. Businesses are struggling and prices are rising. Thankfully, there's a way for people like you around the world to step in and provide strength where it's critically needed. With Blessed by Israel, you have the opportunity to step up and invest in small businesses and families in Israel. By purchasing their wonderful products, when you shop at blessedbyisrael.com, you're getting more than awesome olive oil and tea and honey, cosmetics, and many other great products. You're sending a vital reinforcement to help Israel be strong. So head over to Blessed by Israel, that's blessedbyisrael.com, to enjoy the wonderful products and make your critical investment in the families and small businesses of Israel. Use the INVEST code for $5 off your first order. The UN has leveled criticism at Israel for conducting these anti-terror raids inside Judea and Samaria. Now, what kind of moron would you have to be to criticize Israel for conducting anti-terror raids in Judea and Samaria? Like, really, you've got to be an absolute idiot to say that you shouldn't do anti-terror. What are you, pro-terror? Well, that's the actual situation. The UN is another sponsor of the terror units that are operating here on the Iranian back, okay? So the Iranians are the front, they're funding. The UN also helps with that a little bit as well. But the Secretary General of the UN, Ontario, he says they're calling for an immediate cessation of military actions in Judea and Samaria. Stop fighting terrorists. That's the words from the UN. Stop it. He's concerned over civilian casualties and damage to infrastructure. Well, if you're concerned with those issues, there's a better way to do it. Do you think that if the terrorists are taking over and killing innocent civilians, Jews, that is, which he has no concern for, that's very obvious, let the terrorists go. We don't want to harm infrastructure. We don't want to harm those mosques that are loaded with weapons and ammunition to kill Jews. He urged compliance with the international humanitarian law. So he's going at three angles here. He's saying, stop the war. We don't want to see casualties. We don't want to see the infrastructure destroyed. And international law. How many times have you seen that? International law is always, always brought up. And it's always misunderstood and represented incorrectly when it comes to Israel. Every single time. Again, a mosque, if it's being used as a military infrastructure, can be bombed and should be. All right? So the UN is criticizing Israel for its attack against terrorists, saying you should not destroy their poor infrastructure. For goodness sake, destroy the terrorist infrastructure and bring Israel back to a time of peace. What does the UN stand for anyway? It's supposed to be a place of peace. If you're going to stand up for terrorism, you've just absolutely lost your compass and are no longer doing what you pledged to do. Bring peace. It's obviously not working. Israeli ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, he says, newly appointed, I would add, he says, for a second time, he says, the state of Israel will not sit idly by and wait for scenes of buses and cafes exploding in city centers. That couldn't be said more pointedly. That's exactly correct. Israel cannot listen to the UN, cannot listen to the EU, cannot listen to America when it comes to this. They must have a strong hand against terrorism, and anti-terror operations must proceed in Judea and Samaria before it becomes another situation like what we have in Gaza. The ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, the Israeli ambassador, is exactly right. We can't wait for this to happen, to somehow appease the nations and to appease all the world leaders that this is somehow you have to wait till buses and cafes be blown up before you can respond. No, we don't have to wait for that to happen before Israel can respond. Israel has every right to respond with these counterterrorism operations now. You know, on top of this, the entire EU now is contemplating sanctions on Minister Ben-Gvir and MK Bezalel Smotrich. This is insane. We're fighting a war for survival, and the European Union is saying, oh, we're going to start sanctioning Israeli government leaders. What kind of plan is that? On top of all of what's going on with the operations and the UN and the condemnation and the criticism, now they want to throw another jab. You know, these sanctions have a lot of problems. It affects Israel's economy. It makes people not believe in supporting Israel. It weakens Israel's relationship politically with the foreign governments around, and it also, most importantly, it weakens Israel's fight against terrorism, which Israel does not need to be weakened in its fight for terrorism. It needs to be strengthened so that these terror units don't come and try to destroy the rest of the Western world. We've got to stand with Israel now more than ever. I'll quote again Minister Katz. He says, we are working tirelessly with our European allies to prevent anti-Israel decisions at tomorrow. This is today. This is happening, and they're trying to prevent this. He says, from tomorrow's meeting with foreign ministers and pushing an anti-Israel element. So he's trying to hold back Europe from adopting anti-Israel legislation and sanctions against Israeli members of the government. Now, this kind of stuff weakens Israel. It hurts Israel. It harms Israel because the Israeli citizens don't appreciate it when the world doesn't understand them and tries to demonize and harm them on the world stage. It weakens Israel's fight against terrorism. This cannot be accepted. We must stand with Israel. And I think, again, Minister Katz says it correctly. when he says this, and we'll conclude. Our message is clear. In a reality where Israel faces threats from Iran and its proxies, terror organizations, the free world must stand with Israel, not against it. That cannot be a clearer statement. The world must understand where we are right now. It must back Israel to fight terrorists and not fight against Israel at this critical time in history. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching here today. Don't forget to go jump on Blessed by Israel. Support. Again, don't fight against. Support the Jews of Judea and Samaria. Buy products from here when the rest of the world, and especially in Europe, boycott, divest, and sanction. You support it. Show the world where you stand and be a part of this. Blessed by Israel. Check out the products. Get it there. Guys, as always, don't listen to all the fake news and all the propaganda. Connect to the truth of what's actually happening here in Israel.